This tragedy left his mother traumatized, and she never recovered. She was committed to an institution for the mentally disturbed, and this is where she died. Malcolm then was placed under the care of an older sister and eventually moved to a city called Detroit, a large city in the Midwest of the United States. This means that Malcolm, at a very young age, was sort of orphanized, although he wasn't an orphan. From Detroit to Malcolm moved to other cities like Philadelphia, and then eventually he went to a place called Boston, and there in Boston he ran into some difficulties that landed him in jail. Malcolm spent, some say 9 years, others say 14 years in prison for an act that he didn't do, although he was living that life, meaning that sometimes you wind up getting accused of doing something that you wasn't doing, but maybe you were doing something which was worse than that. So Malcolm never said that I didn't deserve what they gave me. He just said that I wasn't guilty of what they convicted me of. While Malcolm was in prison, a place that doesn't rehabilitate people, that usually intensifies their criminality, Malcolm met some people that were part of a group called the Nation of Islam. And this is where he first heard the name Allah, but they were not speaking of Almighty God. They were talking about a black man that in their view was God in person. And they were followers of a person called Elijah Muhammad, who claimed that he was the prophet of God or prophet of Allah, sent to the lost and found black people of America. Without giving any credibility to their beliefs, which we know now are clearly deviant and not connected to Islam whatsoever, nevertheless, these people, we have to give them credit that that this man, Elijah Muhammad, he was in fact a social reformer. Because what he was able to do, governments today have not been able to do. More specifically, let me tell you, Elijah Muhammad insisted that anyone that followed him, they had to leave alone alcohol. They had to leave alone drugs. They had to swear themselves to leave alone fornication, adultery, stealing, cursing. All of these things, even if they used to play billiards, he didn't allow them to do that. They had to change their dress. They had to change their diet. They used to wear a suit and tie every single day. They could not wear trainers or track suits. They had to cut their hair. They couldn't keep their hair in different kinds of designer styles. He wouldn't allow that. They had to shine their shoes. They had to cut their nails. They had to brush their teeth. They had to keep themselves well groomed and clean. They had to say, yes, sir, no, ma'am. They couldn't lean on, if we were standing, lean. They had to always be having good profile. And because of this radical change in their profile, this radical change, can you imagine? Drug dealers, prostitutes, thieves, bank robbers. I mean, people who were the worst, the scum of the people, the worst of the people, were coming out of the prison, dressed in suits, having these kinds of commitments. They came back to their families as if they were total strangers. Now, we know they were not Muslims, but they were having the ethics, the militance, the consciousness of a Muslim. And the other thing is that he told them that this belief of the white people called Christianity was a false belief. He said Jesus was a black man. Jesus was a prophet. And this whole concoction of Christianity was a lie. And so he told all of his people, deny that and follow me, become Muslims. And they were saying to each other, Assalamu alaikum, peace be upon you. They were praying, facing towards Mecca. They had Quran in their house, although they couldn't read any Arabic. And they called the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessing be upon him, who was born in Mecca. They said he was that Arabian prophet, and we respect him, but we are following the new prophet called Elijah Muhammad. So, although this was a mumbo jumbo like a bowl of soup, nevertheless, he extracted out of Islam and out of the Quran enough inspiration that he changed those people so radically that even today, in this country, when you see the Nation of Islam, the people who they call themselves the Nation of Islam, you see them wearing the bow ties, selling the fish, selling the fruit, selling the newspapers, selling the articles in the street. You see how they dress. You see how they speak. They are still maintaining this profile today, which is more than 50 years later. This means that it had an impact upon their lives. They have reformed themselves. Yarhamukallah. And it is not easy to reform a human being even with a legitimate faith. Elijah Muhammad took a legitimate faith and he created his own innovation upon it, and he was able to literally make men out of stones. Now, we can call him a deviant, a liar, an infidel. We can say whatever we want to say. But since he's dead, I'm not going to say anything other than the fact that he was misguided. But what we have to admit, that he achieved something through his reform of these people, that people that have the legitimate faith of Christianity or the legitimate faith of Islam have yet to do. We don't mean the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam or the companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that they were not able to achieve that. No, they did. We mean contemporary Muslims themselves do not have the level of commitment. They don't have the level of reform. They don't have the level of discipline. They don't have the level of insight, foresight, the profile that these people carry. How they were able to do that is because Elijah insisted on no compromise. You were either in or you're out. And once you're in, you made the commitment and you were bound by that commitment, and everyone looked for you to fulfill that commitment. Literally, they were soldiers. Malcolm, when he met these people inside the prison, he was so impressed with them. Their militance, their dedication, their study circles together, their discipline, how everyone else was eating anything and they would not eat. They only ate fruit, fish, chicken, vegetables. They stuck to their own diet. Even in the prison, they never wore shirts like other people. He insisted that they wore their shirts buttoned up, not open collared. They never were relaxed. He insisted that even though they were wearing prison shoes, they had to use polish and polish them until they could look inside their shoes and make sure their shoes were shined. They stood out from other prisoners. And they didn't play basketball. They didn't play badminton. They didn't fool around. They didn't deal with homosexuality. They didn't write letters to girls. They didn't mix with the other Muslim population. They sat by themselves. And because of that, the prisons began to afford them a level of respect that no other prisoners receive, and that is done even until today. So I'm saying all this to let you understand the atmosphere that contributed towards the first level of Malcolm's reform. Can you imagine when Malcolm got into the prison, he was a drug dealer, a drug user, a con man. We call it a flim-flam man. That's what he was. A pretty boy, with dye in his hair, and wearing zoot suits and acting crazy and cursing and disrespecting women and, all the things that you see on TV today, the young kids that some of y'all want to wear their styles, and some of the young kids you want to listen to their music, Biggie Smalls and Tupac and whatever. Well, at that time, they were no less jahil or foolish then than they were today. Well, these were the people that Malcolm came from. But when he got into the prison, he began to look at these guys and he decided to reform himself in the prison. One of the things that Malcolm began to do while he was in the prison was he couldn't read. And so someone told him, well, if you can't read, why don't you pick up a dictionary while you're here and start understanding what the dictionary means? Well, Malcolm started with the first word in the dictionary called aardvark. It's the first word in the dictionary. The word aardvark. A-A-R-D-V-A-R-K. Why is it the first word? Because it's the word that starts with A-A. So, in the aardvark is an ant-eating mammal. So he started with that word until he completed the memorization of the entire Merriam-Webster dictionary. Can you imagine that? That in a period of 3.5 years, Malcolm memorized the entire Merriam-Webster dictionary. Now you try, if you can, just to take, the Merriam-Webster dictionary, by the way, has approximately 118,000 words. Now you try to memorize 1,000. You try to memorize 2,000. He memorized 118,000 words in a period of 3.5 years, just because he was driven to want to know language and to be able to speak and to be able to understand. During this period of time, he joined the Nation of Islam. He